Welcome, dear listener. In this calm and quiet moment, let us embark on a gentle journey back through time. We will travel together across deserts and centuries, exploring the rise of the early Arab-Islamic Empire, a realm guided first by the humble leadership of the Rashidun Caliphs, then expanded under the far-reaching Umayyads, and finally flourishing in the golden age of the Abbasids. This will not be a harsh or hurried trip, but a peaceful evening stroll through history. As you get comfortable and close your eyes, imagine the soft glow of lantern light and the hushed whispers of bygone eras. In this soothing narrative, I will tell you the story of how a community founded in faith grew into a vast civilization, highlighting key events and figures, all in a quiet, lulling tone, like a bedtime story told under a starlit sky. Take a slow, deep breath. Feel the stillness of the night around you. With each exhale, let go of the day's worries. We are about to visit distant lands and times, but there's no need to strain or remember every detail. Just listen softly. Let the words wash over you like a calming tide. We begin our tale in the city of Medina in the year 632 CE. The air is warm and still. The sands of Arabia have cooled under the evening sky. The Prophet Muhammad has just passed away, and his companions gather to choose a successor. This is where the story of the Arab-Islamic Empire truly begins, a story that will carry us through the Rashidun, Umayyad and Abbasid Caliphates, and then gently bring us back to the quiet present. Feel free to drift along with the narrative. If you find your mind wandering or growing sleepy, that's perfectly fine. The story will continue like a soft stream, guiding you through history without hurry. Now let us step into the first chapter of this tale, the era of the Rashidun Caliphate, the rightly guided caliphs who lit the way. Our journey opens in Medina, in the moments after Prophet Muhammad's passing in 632 CE. Imagine a peaceful courtyard under the dimming afternoon light. A few date palms sway gently in the breeze. In a simple shaded porch, the Prophet's closest friends and family are gathered, speaking in low, respectful tones. They face a sudden reality. For the first time, the young Muslim community must carry on without Muhammad's personal guidance. Yet his example, his kindness, wisdom, and dedication to justice still illuminates their path like a guiding star. It is decided that one of his most trusted companions, Abu Bakr, will lead next. Thus, Abu Bakr becomes the first caliph, or successor, to the Prophet. In the years to follow, three more companions, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, will, one after another, take up the mantle of leadership, making four in total. These four are later remembered with reverence as the Rashidun, which in Arabic means rightly guided caliphs. They earned this title because they strove to rule as Muhammad had, with piety, humility, and fairness, always seeking to do what was right and just. Abu Bakr's time as caliph is short, 632 to 634 CE, but vitally important. In those early days, the Muslim community is like a small lamp flickering in the dark, beautiful yet fragile. Some distant tribes across Arabia who had joined the community during Muhammad's life now waver in their loyalty. They wonder if they should continue to follow the new faith or return to old ways. In response, Abu Bakr stands firm and calm. He gently but resolutely guides the community through what history calls the Ridda Wars, a series of rebellions and refusals that threatened the young Islamic State. Under his steady leadership, unity is restored without allowing the lamp of faith to go out. Tribes that had broken away come back into the fold of the Muslim community. By the time Abu Bakr's brief reign ends, the Arabian Peninsula is united once more in faith and purpose, setting the stage for what is to come. Next, the leadership passes to Umar ibn al-Khattab, 634 to 644 CE, the second Rashidun Caliph. Umar is known for his strong will, simple living, and a deep sense of justice. He often walks the streets of Medina at night, ensuring that even the poorest families have food, a ruler moving in secret, guided by compassion. Under Umar's 10 years of guidance, the Islamic realm begins to stretch beyond the sandy frontiers of Arabia. It is as if a gentle dawn is spreading its light further each day. Muslim armies, carrying a message of monotheism and a hope for new beginnings, set out beyond their homeland. They move quietly and efficiently, more as disciplined travelers than conquerors in these tellings. We imagine them traversing vast open lands under the wide sky, their banners fluttering in the dry wind. In just a few years, these forces reach ancient lands to the north and east. They enter Iraq and Syria, continue into Palestine and Egypt, and push over mountains into Persia, Iran, and even into Armenia. City by city, region by region, the influence of the new faith spreads. Many towns open their gates with minimal resistance, their people curious about this new religion and the just rule it promises. To those listening now, picture olive groves in Syria or the Nile flowing past Egyptian villages as the news of a compassionate new rule arrives. The expansion under Umar is swift, but in our gentle story it feels almost natural, like a tree extending its branches outward, providing shade over a larger area. By the end of Umar's caliphate, the Islamic State has grown into a vast realm that touches the Mediterranean in the west and the highlands of Persia in the east. It's remarkable to think how, in just a decade, a community that was once huddled in Medina now governs lands that had been part of great empires like Byzantium and Persia. Umar is not only a capable leader in war and governance, he is also an innovative administrator. He understands that an expanding empire needs structure, fairness, and a sense of shared identity. To this end, Caliph Umar establishes an Islamic calendar so that all Muslims can mark time in the same way. He chooses as the starting point of this calendar the year of the Hijrah, which was the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina in 6622 CE. That event symbolized a new beginning, and so it is a fitting place to begin counting the years. With this calendar, dates and events are unified under a single timeline, helping far-flung communities feel part of one history. Even tonight, as we speak in the year 2025 CE, the Islamic calendar, the Hijri calendar, is still in use, and it all began with Umar's foresight so many centuries ago. Umar also sets up a system to administer the new lands, often keeping local administrators in place under the guidance of Muslim governors. By doing so, daily life for many people continues peacefully even as political control changes. After Umar's decade of leadership, the role of caliph passes to Uthman ibn Affan 644 to 656 CE. Uthman is an elderly, gentle-natured man from a respected Meccan family, the Umayyad clan. Under Uthman, the empire's expansion continues, if a bit more slowly. The frontiers still inch outward, further into North Africa and deeper into Central Asia. Trade flourishes along the old caravan routes, and the Mediterranean sees the first Muslim naval efforts setting sail. You might picture merchants leading camel caravans loaded with goods, rich textiles, spices, and knowledge flowing into the growing cities of the Caliphate. Uthman's most enduring contribution, however, is not in the battlefield, but in the pages of a book. It is Uthman who oversees the compilation of the Qur'an into a single authoritative text. During the Prophet Muhammad's life, the revelations of the Qur'an were memorized by his companions and also written down in pieces on parchment, bone, and palm leaves. Different companions had slightly different collections of these verses. Uthman, wishing to preserve the purity of Islam's holy book for all time, orders that a standard copy be made and distributed to the major cities. This way, whether one is praying in Medina, Damascus, or Fustat in Egypt, they would recite the same sacred words. This effort strengthened the unity of the Muslim community and encouraged people to study and memorize the Quran without confusion. We can imagine scholars in Uthman's era sitting cross-legged by lantern light, carefully tracing the Arabic letters onto parchment, ensuring every word is correct. Thanks to this careful act, when you hear verses of the Quran today, you are hearing the same words that were recited in Uthman's time, preserved consistently through the ages. It is a comforting thought, a gentle continuity of prayer and sound across 13 centuries. Uthman's reign, though marked by these pious achievements, faces some troubles as well. The empire has grown very large, and some of Uthman's administrative decisions are questioned. Here and there in the provinces, people whisper that the caliph favors his own family, the Umayyads, in giving positions of power. Soldiers and settlers on the frontiers feel they deserve a greater share of wealth or say in governance. These murmurs of discontent remain low and far off at first, like distant thunder on an otherwise clear night, but gradually they intensify and unrest brews. Finally, discontented groups converge on Uthman's house in Medina, and in a tragic turn of events, Caliph Uthman is killed during a mutiny in 656 CE. The gentle old caliph is gone, and turmoil grips the community. It is a shocking and sorrowful moment, the first time a caliph has been violently removed. In our soft retelling, we do not dwell on the violence. We simply note that this event deeply shakes the unity of the Muslim world. It is as if clouds have covered the moon that was lighting our night journey. However, even dark clouds eventually drift, and the light returns. The community must find a way forward. After Uthman's passing, Ali ibn Abi Talib becomes the fourth caliph, 656 to 661 CE. Ali is the Prophet Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, beloved by many for his courage and knowledge. Many in the community have long admired Ali and are pleased to see him finally in leadership. One might imagine a collective sigh of relief. Surely the wise and devout Ali can heal the divisions that have opened. Ali indeed tries his best to reconcile disputes and refocus the community on spiritual ideals. He is a person of deep faith, often spending nights in prayer and meditation. But the storm that began at Uthman's end has not yet passed. Some members of the community, including a powerful governor named Muawiyah in Syria, a relative of Uthman, demand justice for Uthman's death and refuse to acknowledge Ali's authority until that is settled. Others have different grievances. The result is a period of strife and confusion known in history as the First Fitna, or First Civil War, among Muslims. For the first time, Muslim is fighting Muslim, and this is a great sadness that weighs on all hearts. Battles flare up, then negotiations, then more conflicts. Ali faces challenges from multiple directions, and even within his own camp, some break away, a group known as the Kharijites. Our purpose tonight is not to delve into the details of these battles, but to understand that this was a time of testing and trial for the early Muslim community. After several years of conflict, a fateful moment arrives in 661 CE under the pale light of dawn. Ali, while praying in a mosque, is attacked and fatally wounded by a dissident. The fourth caliph passes away, and with him the era of the Rashidun Caliphate comes to an end. The community is left without the last of its rightly guided leaders. It is a moment of both grief and uncertainty, but also a moment that will lead to new beginnings. The death of Ali marks the conclusion of a chapter, one filled with both remarkable achievements and great challenges. Before we move on, let's pause to gently reflect on what the Rashidun Caliphs accomplished in those early years. In less than 30 years, 632 to 661 CE, they laid the foundation of an empire and a faith community that would endure for centuries. They governed simply and piously, striving to emulate Prophet Muhammad's example in both private and public life. Under their guidance, Islam spread far beyond the sands of Arabia, reaching into the fertile crescent of Iraq and Syria, the ancient lands of Egypt and Persia, and the hills of Armenia. The administration they established was infused with religious values. Prayer and governance went hand in hand, as the caliphs led both the congregation in the mosque and the armies in the field. They introduced the Islamic Hijri calendar to unite the faithful in time, and compiled the Qur'an to unite them in scripture. These efforts strengthened the bonds of the Ummah, the global Muslim community, giving it tools to remain cohesive even as it grew. It was also during this time that a profound split occurred within Islam. A disagreement over who should rightfully succeed as leader after the Prophet, and especially after Ali's death, led to the emergence of two branches, Sunni and Shia Islam. Those who upheld the legitimacy of all four Rashidun Caliphs and subsequent caliphs came to be called Sunnis, while those who believed Ali and his descendants had a special right to leadership came to be called Shia, the party of Ali. This gentle narration notes this development without any judgment. It was a historical turning point that would shape Muslim history to this day, much like two paths diverging in a quiet wood, each followed by faithful travelers. Think for a moment of the Rashidun era as a candle's steady flame. It provided light and guidance at the very start of the Islamic story, flickering at times in the winds of adversity, but ultimately passing its light on to new candles. Those new candles would be the dynasties to come. The companions of the Prophet had done their part, and now the mantle of leadership was about to pass to a new family. Allow yourself to envision the city of Medina one last time in 6661 CE at twilight. The humble homes and the Prophet's mosque are bathed in a soft glow. People are hopeful that peace will come after the storm. In the distance, however, the center of power is already beginning to shift. Our journey now will follow that shift, northward to the city of Damascus, where a new dynasty and chapter is about to begin. As the Rashidun era closes, a new moon rises over the Muslim world, the moon of the Umayyad Caliphate. The Umayyads are a prominent Meccan family, the clan of Umayyah that had early on been opponents of Islam, but later embraced the faith and provided capable administrators. One of their own, Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, had been the powerful governor of Syria during the later Rashidun period. Muawiyah was a shrewd, pragmatic leader, and during the conflicts in Ali's time, he had asserted his own claim to rule. In 661 CE, with Ali gone and the Muslim world weary of civil war, Muawiyah gains broad support and is recognized as caliph. He establishes his capital in the ancient city of Damascus in Syria, far from Medina's quiet oasis. This marks a significant shift. The Islamic Empire's political center moves out of Arabia into the fertile lands of the Levant, inheriting the legacy of Greco-Roman and Byzantine governance that existed there. The Umayyad Caliphate thus begins in 661 CE, becoming the first great Muslim dynasty to rule the empire of the Caliphate. Under Muawiyah's astute leadership, the state becomes more centralized. He is known to have said that he rules not with the lash, but with a silken thread, meaning he prefers diplomacy and gifts to keep his officials loyal. Yet one decisive step Muawiyah takes sets the tone for this new era. He designates his son Yazid to succeed him, establishing a hereditary succession in place of the previous elective or consultative system. This is a turning point in governance. No longer will the caliph be chosen by a council of elders or the community's consensus, as in the days of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. Instead, the caliphate now becomes a family affair, passed from father to son, inaugurating a dynastic rule. Some contemporaries are uneasy with this change, but Muawiyah manages the transition smoothly during his lifetime, and upon his death in 680, Yazid indeed takes the throne. Thus the Umayyads firmly entrench their dynasty. You might visualize a royal court in Damascus, its halls lit by torches, where courtiers bow to a caliph seated on a throne. An image quite different from the simple mosque of Medina, where Umar once delivered sermons. This is symbolic of how the caliphate's style is evolving, from the relatively austere, community-oriented leadership of the Rashidun to the more regal, king-like aura of the Umayyad monarchs. Later Muslim historians would sometimes refer to the Umayyad period as the era of the Arab kingdom, noting that the Umayyad caliphs acted in many ways like traditional kings. Still, in our gentle story, we remember that these caliphs were also men who bowed in prayer, respected the Qur'an, and saw themselves as defenders of Islam, even if their approach to governing was more formal and worldly. Under the Umayyads, the empire expands at an unprecedented pace. If the Rashidun had planted the seed of the empire, the Umayyads would make it blossom across continents. Take a slow breath and envision a map of the Old World in the early 8th century. To the west, the Atlantic Ocean laps at the shores of North Africa and Spain. To the east, beyond Persia, lies the vast expanse of India and even the frontiers of China. Now imagine the green domains of the Caliphate spreading like a calm, rising tide, reaching farther and farther. Under a series of determined Umayyad caliphs and generals, the Islamic Empire extends as far west as Spain and as far east as the edges of India. In the west, Muslim armies, including many Arab and Berber soldiers, cross the sea from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula. In 711 CE, led by a general named Tariq ibn Ziyad, they famously land at a rocky promontory which comes to be known as Jabal Tariq, or Gibraltar, named after him. Within a few years, most of Spain, Al-Andalus, comes under Islamic rule, and the waves of this expansion even wash into Frankish Gaul, modern France, until they are halted at the Battle of Tours in 732. To the north, they venture into what is now France briefly, but soon consolidate in the Iberian heartlands. In the east, other forces march through the rugged passes of the Hindu Kush Mountains. By 712 CE, they enter the Indus Valley in what is now Pakistan, bringing regions of Sindh under the Caliphate's banner. They press into Central Asia as well. The famed cities of Bukhara and Samarkand in Transoxiana, today's Uzbekistan, fall under Muslim control around the same era. There is even a confrontation with the Chinese Tang Dynasty at the frontiers, the Battle of Talas in 751, where legend says papermaking technology was learned. More on that later. The empire also pushes its borders northward into the Caucasus and westward across the Maghreb, northwest Africa. At its zenith, the Umayyad Caliphate forms one of the largest empires in history, encompassing a vast swath of the known world, an area so large and diverse that the sun is always shining on some part of it. One poetic description often used, from the Atlantic coast in the west to the great rivers of Central Asia in the east, the empire stretched in one unbroken expanse. Consider how life might feel within such a sprawling realm. We picture a traveller of the early 8th century embarking from the lively port of Alexandria in Egypt, sailing the Mediterranean under gentle skies, landing at Tripoli in North Africa, then joining a caravan crossing the Strait of Gibraltar to the markets of Cordoba in Spain, all without ever leaving lands ruled by the Caliph. Alternatively, think of a merchant starting in the mountains of Persia, following the Silk Road westward with bales of silk and spices, through Samarkand and Baghdad and onward to Damascus, and finally down to the holy city of Mecca, again, all under the umbrella of one empire. The Arabic language, promoted by the Umayyads, begins to serve as a common thread binding these far-flung places, even as many local languages remain alive. In bustling cities across the Caliphate, you would hear a chorus of tongues, Arabic, of course, but also Greek in Syria, Coptic in Egypt, Berber dialects in Africa, Latin or Visigothic in Spain, Persian in Iran, and countless others, all intermixed under the sounds of camel bells and marketplace haggling. The empire is diverse, a mosaic of cultures, religions, and peoples. And yet, a traveller notices certain unifying features. The Friday sermon, khutbah, delivered in Arabic in the main mosque of each city in the caliph's name, the uniform gold and silver coins stamped with Arabic inscriptions praising God, and the functioning roads and postal routes that allow a letter from Damascus to reach Cairo or Kufa relatively swiftly. Indeed, one of the remarkable administrative feats of the Umayyads, particularly under the Caliph Abd al-Malik, who ruled 685 to 705 CE, is a comprehensive program of centralization and Arabization. Sometime in the 680s and 690s, Abd al-Malik makes a series of decisions that streamline governance across the empire. He declares Arabic to be the official language of administration, replacing Greek in the former Byzantine lands and Persian, Pahlavi in the former Sassanid territories. This means government records, court proceedings, and bureaucracy from Egypt to Persia begin operating in one language, which helps standardize state operations. To support this, Abd al-Malik also mints new coinage for the empire, gold dinars and silver dirhams that depart from the old Byzantine and Persian-style coins. These new coins are stamped with Arabic phrases, often the Islamic statement of faith, rather than the images of Byzantine emperors or Persian kings, reinforcing a distinct Islamic identity in trade and tax collection. You might imagine a merchant in the marketplace running his fingers over a shiny new dinar and reading the elegant Kufic script of the Arabic inscription, feeling a sense of unity with distant lands using the same currency. Abd al-Malik's reforms don't stop there. He also improves communication across the vast empire by establishing a regular postal service. Fresh horses and riders at well-placed relay stations carry official mail swiftly along highways from Damascus outwards, much like a nervous system connecting the far parts of a body to its heart. News and orders can reach provinces in weeks instead of months, which in the 7th century world is a marvel of efficiency. Under the Umayyads, architecture and urban development flourish as well. With the empire's wealth and stability, caliphs and governors construct grand buildings that inspire the faithful and assert the presence of the new order. One of the earliest and most splendid examples is the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, commissioned by Caliph Abd al-Malik around 691 CE. Even in today's world, that golden dome stands resplendent on the noble sanctuary, but imagine seeing it when it was newly built, its mosaics glittering in the sunlight, verses of the Qur'an adorning its walls for the first time. Pilgrims in Jerusalem must have gazed at it in awe, a beautiful sanctuary built over a rock revered by tradition. Another example is the Great Umayyad Mosque of Damascus, completed in 715 CE under Caliph al-Walid. It was built on the site of a former Byzantine church, incorporating Roman columns and embellished with intricate mosaics depicting an earthly paradise. It became a symbol of Damascus's importance and the Muslim community's rootedness in the ancient city. We can close our eyes and picture worshippers in Damascus walking through the mosque's courtyard at dusk, the last rays of sun illuminating golden mosaic scenes of gardens and rivers on the walls, while the muezzin's call to prayer echoes off the marble floors, a serene end to a day in the Umayyad capital. While art, architecture and administration thrived, the Umayyad period was not without its challenges and controversies. Let us address them softly, as one might explain distant thunder during an otherwise calm night. One major event took place in 680 CE, shortly after Muawiyah's son Yazid assumed power. In that year, the Prophet's grandson, Husayn ibn Ali, son of Caliph Ali, led a small band of family and companions in a stand against Yazid's rule, seeking justice and reform. They were tragically intercepted on the plains of Karbala in present-day Iraq. In a brief and heart-rending confrontation, Husayn's group was killed, and Husayn himself was martyred. This sorrowful event, the Battle of Karbala, became a defining moment in Islamic memory, especially for Shia Muslims. For the Shia, Husayn's martyrdom at Karbala symbolizes the epitome of sacrifice against tyranny, and it deepened their devotion to the family of Ali. In our quiet journey, we pause to acknowledge the pain of that day. We picture the desert of Karbala under a harsh sun, then imagine night falling and silence over the field, a silence that carries the weight of mourning. The reverberations of Karbala would resonate through history, solidifying the Sunni-Shia split that had begun with Ali's disputed caliphate. Sunnis and Shias would carry forward different perspectives, but both would cherish the memory of the Prophet and the early days of Islam in their own ways. Even as the empire grew politically, this spiritual and communal divide became part of the tapestry of the Muslim world. Another challenge for the Umayyads was ruling over an increasingly diverse population. Although the Umayyad elite were Arab and tended at first to favor fellow Arabs in governance, the empire now included millions of non-Arab subjects, many of them Muslims, new converts called Mawali, as well as Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, and others. Non-Arab Muslims sometimes felt like second-class citizens under Umayyad rule, as the administration was heavily Arab-centric. They continued to pay certain taxes that Arab Muslims were exempt from, and high offices often went only to Arabs. Over time, resentment grew among the Mawali, and also among Arab tribes themselves who vied with each other for influence. In response to these strains, one Umayyad Caliph, Umar II, ruling 707 to 720, is said to have tried a more pious and egalitarian approach, granting more equal treatment to non-Arab Muslims and emphasizing Islamic virtues in governance. However, these reforms, while morally admirable, inadvertently caused financial difficulties, since tax revenues from non-Arab converts dropped. Tribal rivalries also continued to fester. All these undercurrents were like cracks forming beneath a grand building, not immediately visible to outsiders perhaps, but growing slowly with time. By the middle of the 8th century, the Umayyad Caliphate, for all its grandeur, was struggling to hold itself together. The empire had perhaps overextended. It was simply too large to govern effectively from one center with the communications of that age. Frontier defenses became harder to maintain. In 717, an ambitious Umayyad campaign to conquer Constantinople failed, straining military resources. Economic strains grew, and attempts to fix them pleased some, but angered others. Meanwhile, new movements were rising. In the far eastern province of Khorasan, in Persia, a simmering discontent found leadership in a revolutionary faction. They rallied under the banner of the Prophet's family, implicitly supporting the line of Ali, and wore black flags. Among them were not only Shia supporters of Ali's house, but also many local Persians and others who simply opposed Umayyad rule and its inequities. This coalition found a figurehead in the Abbasid family, who were relatives of the Prophet, descendants of his uncle Abbas, and thus had a degree of spiritual legitimacy. By 747 CE, open revolt flared in Khorasan. Over the next few years, the Abbasid revolution swept westward like a desert storm gathering force. Finally, in 750 CE, the Abbasid forces defeated the last Umayyad Caliph in battle, bringing the Umayyad dynasty to an abrupt and dramatic end. Virtually the entire Umayyad family was eliminated, save for a prince named Abd al-Rahman who managed a daring escape to Spain. In distant Spain, Abd al-Rahman would establish a breakaway Umayyad emirate, which later became the Caliphate of Cordoba, an island of Umayyad rule that continued to shine in the west even as the main Umayyad line ended. But that is a parallel story, perhaps one for another quiet night. For now, we turn our focus to the east, where the Abbasids rise. We can imagine the dawn of the Abbasid Caliphate in 750 CE as a new sun rising, casting a different hue over the Islamic world. The revolution that brought them to power was bloody, yes, but our narrative will step past the violence and look at what new light the Abbasids brought. The Umayyad chapter closes with a mix of nostalgia and understanding. In less than a century of rule, the Umayyads had transformed the Caliphate from a modest regional state into a world empire, spreading Islam and the Arabic language from the Atlantic to the Himalayas. They had their faults and made their mistakes, but they also built the roads, minted the coins, and raised the mosques that would form the groundwork of Islamic civilization. As we bid them farewell in this story, we picture Damascus, their capital, one last time, perhaps in the year 750, under a twilight sky. The city's citizens have heard the news that a new dynasty is in charge. The mood is uncertain but hopeful. Life, as always, continues. The bread makers bake, the scholars teach, the children play in courtyards. A messenger from the Abbasids has delivered a proclamation of the new rule, and the adhan, call to prayer, at the mosque now invokes the name of a new caliph in Baghdad instead of the old one in Damascus. The world has changed quietly, and most people simply carry on, adapting as humans always do. Let us follow that change to the city of Baghdad and into the golden age of the Abbasids. In the year 750 CE, a new dynasty takes up the mantle of leadership, the Abbasid dynasty, named after al-Abbas, the Prophet Muhammad's uncle. The Abbasids come to power on a wave of support from various groups unhappy with the Umayyads, Persian converts, Shia partisans, and even pious Muslims who felt the Umayyads had drifted from the Prophet's egalitarian teachings. The revolution that elevates the Abbasids is swift. Abu al-Abbas as-Saffar is proclaimed the first Abbasid Caliph. It's said his title, as-Saffar, means the generous, or the shedder of blood, reflecting both his role as a benefactor to supporters and the bloody purge of Umayyad elites that accompanied the revolution. The Abbasids consolidate power in Iraq and Iran, far from the old Umayyad strongholds in Syria. Rather than ruling from Damascus, the second Abbasid Caliph, al-Mansur, decides to build a completely new capital city, one that would symbolize a fresh start and the dawning of a new era. He chooses a site on the Tigris River, not far from ancient Babylon and the old Sassanid capital of Ctesiphon. There, in 762 CE, workers break ground for the city that will become Baghdad. Let's slow down and paint this scene. Envision a flat, fertile plain by a great bend in the Tigris under the clear blue sky of Mesopotamia. Thousands of workers, engineers, and craftsmen from all corners of the empire have gathered. Al-Mansur himself is said to have carefully supervised the planning. They designed Baghdad as a perfect circle, nearly 2 miles across, an innovative plan reflecting ancient Persian and perhaps even cosmic ideas. A circle, the most perfect shape. The city's layout is meticulously planned. At the very center stands the Caliph's palace, known as the Golden Gate Palace, and the Grand Mosque, side by side, symbolizing the union of temporal and spiritual authority. Radiating from this center are broad avenues like spokes of a wheel. Massive brick walls, reinforced by a deep moat, ring the city, not one but 2 concentric walls for extra protection. 4 monumental gates pierce the circular walls at the cardinal points, each gate leading out to a road towards a different part of the empire. One road leads west to Syria, one south to Kufa and Arabia, one north to Mosul and Anatolia, and one east toward Khorasan and Persia. It is said that on the day of the city's foundation, Al-Mansur personally walked the perimeter where the walls would rise, and that the architects used cotton strings and incense to trace the circular design on the ground. When the incense was lit, the burning line showed where to lay the bricks. Construction took 4 years, employing over 100,000 workers, a testament to the scale of Abbasid ambition. When finished, Baghdad was unlike any city the Islamic world had seen, earning the nickname the Round City. Soon, this new capital, Baghdad, surpasses all expectations. Al-Mansur's decision proves wise. The city's location is superb, at the crossroads of trade routes linking east and west. Caravans can arrive from the Silk Road routes of Central Asia and China. Boats can sail up the Tigris from the Persian Gulf with goods from India and beyond, and routes from Syria and the Mediterranean also connect here. Baghdad becomes a magnet for commerce, intellect, and talent. Under the third Caliph, al-Mahdi, and especially the famous fifth Caliph Harun al-Rashid, 786 to 809 CE, Baghdad truly blossoms. Ready for the next passage when you are. On the broad avenues, you see people of many backgrounds. Arab nobles in flowing robes, Persian scholars with scrolls underarm, Turkic soldiers in uniform, Indian and Chinese merchants unloading wares, African traders guiding camels with ivory and gold, and European diplomats or travelers marveling at the sights. Baghdad is a cosmopolitan hub, the meeting point of Afro-Eurasian civilization, truly a melting pot of cultures and ideas. The Abbasid Caliphs, especially in the first century of their rule, foster an environment where knowledge, culture, and innovation thrive like never before. We often refer to this period as the Islamic Golden Age, and with good reason. The Abbasids, influenced by Islamic teachings that value knowledge so highly, remember the saying attributed to the Prophet, "Seek knowledge even unto China," or the hadith that the ink of a scholar is holier than the blood of a martyr. Actively patronize scholarship and learning. They invest state resources into building libraries, academies, and inviting scholars from various lands to their capital. Perhaps the most iconic of these institutions is the Bayt al-Hikmah, the House of Wisdom in Baghdad. Caliph Harun al-Rashid is often credited with its inception, but it truly flourishes under his son al-Ma'mun, Caliph 813 to 833 CE. The House of Wisdom is not merely a library, it is a grand academy and intellectual salon. Within its halls, scholars, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and others, work side by side, translating the great works of antiquity into Arabic. They gather texts from Greek, Syriac, Persian, Indian, Sanskrit, and other languages, philosophy treatises by Plato and Aristotle, medical works by Galen and Hippocrates, mathematical writings, astronomical tables, and more. In a quiet corner of our minds, let's walk through the House of Wisdom. We see long wooden tables piled with scrolls. The air smells of ink and old paper. Scholars in robes of various styles are bent over manuscripts, copying, translating, writing commentaries. A grey-bearded man carefully transcribes Euclid's geometry from a Greek manuscript, drawing precise diagrams of circles and triangles on parchment. At another desk, a team of scholars is busy translating a Sanskrit text on astronomy into Arabic, debating the correct terms for planets and constellations. Shelves lining the walls overflow with books. This is a labor of love, fueled by curiosity and a passion for learning. Through their efforts, a vast body of knowledge from previous civilizations is preserved and greatly expanded. Indeed, many classical works only survived into modern times thanks to their Arabic translations made in Baghdad, without which they might have been lost. It's a gentle reminder of how cultures are linked like chapters in one long book, each learning from the ones that came before. Translation is only the beginning. Abbasid Baghdad and other cities in this era don't just passively preserve ancient knowledge, they become crucibles of innovation, improving and creating on their own. Let's take a tour of some fields. In mathematics, a brilliant mind named Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi emerges around 820 CE. Working likely in the House of Wisdom, al-Khwarizmi writes a book that systematizes a new way of solving equations, something he calls al-Jabr, which means restoration, referring to balancing equations. This is the birth of algebra, a completely new branch of mathematics. Al-Khwarizmi's treatise, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, gives its name to the algebra we learn in schools today. He introduces systematic solutions for linear and quadratic equations and demonstrates how to use algorithms step by step. In fact, the word algorithm comes from the Latin form of al-Khwarizmi's own name. Moreover, al-Khwarizmi plays a key role in spreading the use of Hindu-Arabic numerals, the digit 09 in the Muslim world and eventually to Europe. Can you imagine mathematics today without the zero or these familiar digits? Before this, people in the West used cumbersome Roman numerals. The introduction of the simpler numeral system revolutionized calculation. We owe much of that to these Abbasid-era scholars. In our mind's eye, we see al-Khwarizmi presenting the concept of zero, a humble circle, yet holding immense power as a placeholder to curious colleagues, and we sense the quiet revolutionary change taking root. In astronomy, Abbasid scientists gaze at the heavens with a sense of wonder and precision. They build on Greek and Indian astronomy, but soon make their own mark. Al-Battani, for example, in the 9th century calculates the length of the solar year and the movements of planets with remarkable accuracy. Observatories are established, including a famous one in Baghdad under al-Ma'mun. Astronomers refine the astrolabe, a device to determine positions of stars and planets, to navigate and tell time. They even measure the Earth. One expedition under al-Ma'mun's patronage measures the length of a degree of latitude in the Syrian desert, coming astonishingly close to the actual circumference of the Earth. They knew the Earth was round and aimed to calculate its size. We picture a team of astronomers and surveyors laying ropes and using sighting instruments under the desert sun, then returning to Baghdad to crunch numbers by candlelight. The night sky over Baghdad would have been a source of endless inspiration. Without city light pollution as we have now, the stars must have been dazzling. One can imagine an astronomer climbing a minaret or observatory roof on a clear night, the Milky Way arching overhead, and using a perfected astrolabe to chart the positions of planets, all while the city sleeps quietly below. In medicine, the Abbasid era sees tremendous advancements. Scholars compile and expand upon Greek, Persian, and Indian medical knowledge. The capital, Baghdad, supports bimaristans, hospitals that are surprisingly advanced for their time, offering care for various ailments and even performing surgeries. By the early 9th century, Baghdad had over 800 licensed physicians practicing in the city. Medical schools and hospitals produced physicians who wrote comprehensive texts. One standout figure is Abu Bakr al-Razi, Razi, a physician who ran the hospital in Ray, near Tehran, and later in Baghdad. He wrote treatises on diseases and was the first to clearly distinguish smallpox from measles clinically, providing guidance on their treatment. Another colossal figure is Ibn Sina, Avicenna, a polymath from the eastern regions of the Caliphate, beyond the Oxus River. In the early 11th century, building on centuries of accumulated knowledge, Ibn Sina writes the Canon of Medicine, an encyclopedia that systematizes all medical knowledge available and adds his own insights. This work becomes a standard medical text not only in the Islamic world but in Europe, when translated into Latin for hundreds of years. Imagine a healing scene. A patient lies on a bed in a Baghdad hospital feverish. A kindly doctor, wearing a simple white robe, checks his pulse and urine, consults a large handwritten book for diagnosis, and prescribes herbal remedies, all practices described in those great medical texts. The atmosphere is quiet and smells of herbs and vinegar, disinfectants, while trainees and nurses move about gently. In optics and physics, we meet Hassan ibn al-Haytham, al-Hazan, who around the year 1000 conducts experiments in Basra and Cairo. He wants to understand how vision works and how light behaves. Contrary to the ancient Greek idea that the eye emits rays, Ibn al-Haytham boldly hypothesizes that in fact, light enters the eye to enable vision. He devises experiments in dark rooms with pinholes, creating the first camera obscura, and carefully observes light rays. His work, Kitab al-Manazir, Book of Optics, lays down the principles of scientific experimentation and the scientific method long before the Renaissance. In it, he systematically tests hypotheses with controlled experiments, making him a true pioneer of empirical science. One could imagine him in a dim room, a small beam of sunlight coming through a tiny hole in the shutter, casting an inverted image of the outside world on the opposite wall, and Ibn al-Haytham moving a sheet of paper back and forth to find the focus, smiling as he realizes how vision and light obey geometric rules. He is often called the father of modern optics, and indeed his approaches influenced later European scientists. One could go on and on about the intellectual feats of this golden age, Philosophy saw figures like al-Kindi, al-Farabi, and later Ibn Rushd, Averroes, and Ibn Sina, who engaged deeply with Plato and Aristotle, trying to harmonize them with Islamic thought. They kept alive a tradition of rational inquiry and inspired medieval scholasticism in Europe. Chemistry, alchemy, developed too. Jabir ibn Hayyan Geber pioneered early chemical processes, and while seeking to turn base metals into gold, a quest that largely failed, alchemists made real discoveries like classifying substances and techniques like distillation. Geography and history flourished, with travelers and historians writing detailed accounts of far lands. Consider Ibn Fadlan's journey to the Volga, or al-Tabari's monumental history. Art and literature found new expression. In this period, the art of Arabic calligraphy reaches new heights. Since Islam discouraged figurative art in religious contexts, artists poured creativity into beautiful script and geometric design. Decorative arts like ceramics, metalwork, and textiles from the Abbasid era show intricate patterns that still inspire awe. And of course, we must speak of literature and storytelling in this time. For what would a bedtime story be without mentioning the tales told on those long-ago nights? It is during the Abbasid era, especially around the 9th and 10th centuries, that the famous collection of stories known as 1001 Nights, or Arabian Nights, begins to take shape. Although the stories themselves come from various cultures, Persian, Indian, Arabic, Mesopotamian, and Egyptian folk tales woven together, it is under the Abbasids that they were compiled and expanded into the form closer to what we know. We imagine the legendary Queen Sherazade, the storyteller in 1001 Nights, sitting by the lamplight, telling tale after tale to the king to fend off her fate, each night a new story that blends into the next. Tales of Aladdin and his magic lamp, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, Sinbad the sailor on his voyages. These were not written down in definitive form during the early Abbasid period, but the oral traditions and early manuscripts of them were circulating in that cultural milieu. Baghdad and its sister cities were filled with storytelling, in market squares, in royal courts, in family gatherings. Poetry, too, thrived. Elegant verses in Arabic and Persian were composed on themes of love, faith, and the ephemeral nature of life. The gentle strumming of the oud, lute, and the recitation of a beautiful poem could be found in a corner of an Abbasid garden at night, entertaining a small circle of friends under lantern light. The notion is delightful. Even as we now engage in a calming story to lull us into sleep, people in the Abbasid era likely did the same, listening to enchanting stories after dinner, letting their imaginations wander as the narrator spoke, eventually drifting into pleasant dreams. The economy of the Abbasid Caliphate during its prime was also something wondrous. Baghdad sat practically at the center of global trade routes, dominating the Silk Road that connected China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Abbasid Caliphs invested in infrastructure, maintaining roads, canals for irrigation, and promoting agriculture. The fertile lands of Mesopotamia were further developed, and new crops were introduced from distant lands. The so-called Arab agricultural revolution saw things like rice, sugarcane, cotton, and various fruits being grown far from their native homes. The empire's wealth was enhanced by this vibrant trade and agriculture. Harun al-Rashid's court was said to be fabulously wealthy. In popular imagination, we often recall the story of Harun sending an elephant and rich gifts to Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, as a friendly gesture. This was a symbol of how far-reaching the Abbasids' connections were. The revenues from commerce allowed the Abbasids to fund their scholarship and arts generously. For example, it is noted that translators at the House of Wisdom were often paid in gold by the weight of the books they translated, an incentive both practical and symbolic of the high value placed on knowledge. Ready for the next passage when you are. What followed was, historically, a tragic sacking of the city. Libraries and palaces destroyed, many inhabitants killed, and the last reigning Abbasid Caliph of Baghdad, al-Mustasim, executed. In the context of our gentle journey, we won't paint the horrors of that day. Instead, we observe it as the closing of a chapter. The Abbasid Caliphate's political reign in Baghdad came to an end in 1258. It was as if a grand and ancient tree had finally fallen. Some say the waters of the Tigris ran black with ink from all the books thrown into the river, and red with the blood of scholars and civilians, metaphors for the end of a golden era. Yet in the spirit of hope, we note, even when a great tree falls, it leaves behind seeds. The knowledge, culture, and spirit nurtured during the Abbasid centuries were not lost. They had already spread far and wide and would find soil elsewhere to grow anew. Indeed, the legacy of the Rashidun, Umayyad, and Abbasid periods continued to live on. Soon after 1258, a branch of the Abbasid family was invited to Cairo, where a symbolic Abbasid Caliphate under Mamluk protection persisted, though with no temporal power. Later, new Muslim empires would emerge: the Ottoman Turks, the Safavids, the Mughals, and each in different ways were heirs to the foundational work done in those early centuries. Europe, too, would benefit immensely from the Islamic Golden Age. Through contacts in Spain, Sicily, and the Crusades, the books of Islamic scholars were translated into Latin. The knowledge of algebra, optics, medicine, and philosophy, preserved and expanded by the Abbasids, helped ignite the European Renaissance. Even today, as we live and breathe in this modern world, we carry fragments of that legacy in our everyday life. When we use the numbers 0 to 9 in a calculation or solve an algebraic equation, we are indebted to mathematicians of the Abbasid era. When a doctor diagnoses an illness or uses terms like alcohol, from al-Kul, a word Arabic chemists gave to a refined substance, or alkali, from al-Kali, Arabic for a kind of ashes used to make soap, they unknowingly echo the contributions of those scholars. When we admire the stars or use a camera, born from the camera obscura concept, we are in touch with the spirit of Ibn al-Haytham's inquiry. And when we read stories of Aladdin or Sinbad, or even simply say good night in English, we are speaking words influenced by Arabic. For example, good night has no direct Arabic root, but many other words in English do, like alchemy, coffee, or sofa, from Arabic al-Kemia, kahwa, sufa, little reminders of a cross-cultural exchange that enriched the world. As our historical journey nears its end, let's gently recap the path we took, reinforcing it softly in our minds. We began with the Rashidun Caliphs, 4 righteous leaders, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, who guided the nascent Muslim community, expanded its reach, and set its core values. They shone like the first light of dawn after the Prophet's time, establishing unity, justice, and a legacy of faith. Under them, the groundwork was laid, the Qur'an compiled, the calendar set, the community held together. Then we moved to the broad daylight of the Umayyad era, the empire's borders extending dramatically from ocean to ocean, the state becoming more regal and administratively unified, Arabic language and Islamic coinage binding it together. The Umayyads contributed to the political and infrastructural backbone of the empire, even as internal discontent brewed. Finally, we arrived at the Abbasid Golden Age, an afternoon of golden sunshine in our metaphor, a time of cultural and scientific flourishing in cities like Baghdad. Here, knowledge became the prized treasure, leading to advances that illuminated the world. This era emphasized inclusivity, many peoples and talents integrated into the Caliphate's fold, and intellectual curiosity, with institutions like the House of Wisdom standing as a beacon. Though that golden sun eventually set with the fall of Baghdad in 1258, its afterglow remained, reflected in the stars that came out after, the continued scholarship, the new kingdoms, the transmission of knowledge to distant lands. Now, dear listener, our peaceful journey through history is drawing to a close. We have walked side by side through the bustling streets of Medina, Damascus, and Baghdad, listening to the echoes of footfalls from long ago. We sat under the date palms with the Rashidun Caliphs, feeling the warmth of their simple faith and resolve. We rode with the Umayyad caravans across deserts and mountains, sensing the vastness of an empire under the desert sky. We wandered through the libraries and gardens of the Abbasids, marveling at wisdom passed down like a cherished lullaby from generation to generation. Take a moment to appreciate the tapestry of time we have gently unfurled. The rise and fall of caliphates, the blending of cultures, the pursuit of knowledge, and the endurance of faith, all have been part of our story. This story is not just about empires and rulers, it is also about ordinary people through the ages, finding meaning and peace in their lives. It's about the human quest for understanding and connection. From the devoted companion keeping night watch with Umar in Medina, To the scholar staying up late in Baghdad, copying a manuscript by candlelight. To the mother in Cordoba telling her children stories of heroic adventurers. The spirit of these early Islamic centuries lives on in countless acts of learning, kindness, and imagination. As you lie here now, in the quiet of your own night, you might feel the subtle continuity between those past times and this moment. We are all links in a long chain of history, and tonight we touched the strong golden links formed by the Rashidun, Umayyads, and Abbasids. The events may be in the past, but their effects surround us, in our books, our sciences, our everyday words, and our shared human heritage. It's a comforting thought. We are connected to that grand history, and thus never truly alone. In the silence of the night, if you listen carefully, perhaps you can imagine the faint sounds of history. The distant call to prayer in a sleeping city, the scratch of a scholar's pen, the hoofbeats of riders carrying messages under a moonlit sky, or the soft voice of Scheherazade weaving a tale to inspire hope till dawn. All those echoes float gently around us like a soothing chorus. Now, with our tale told, let us gradually return to the present and to rest. Feel the softness of your pillow and the warmth of your blanket. Allow the images of ancient deserts, palaces, and libraries to fade into a calm darkness. You have traveled far and wide in your mind, and it is time to come home to your own quiet heart. Let the peaceful lessons of history, of unity, knowledge, and faith settle comfortably in your thoughts. In this relaxed state, know that as surely as day follows night, knowledge follows curiosity, and peace follows understanding. You are safe, you are calm, and you can let go of all worries now. If sleep has not already come, it will come in its own time, softly and naturally. Breathe slowly and deeply, and feel the gentle weight of your body sinking into the bed, supported by the earth just as civilizations are supported by the layers of history beneath them. Our journey through the Arab-Islamic Empire has been like a long, calming story, bridging the gap between wakefulness and dreams. There is nothing more you need to do, nowhere else you need to be. Like the travelers of old who found rest at the end of a long caravan route, you too can find rest here and now, at the end of this story. Thank you for listening and coming along on this tranquil voyage through time. May your mind be at ease, your heart be full of understanding, and your spirit be as serene as a starry night over the dunes. We have reached the final destination of our narrative, and all that's left is to let the quiet of the night embrace us. Sweet dreams, and good night. Good night.